Good afternoon. We finally got a project that I'm excited for. It's the WUTANG STI. We're finally on to more exciting stuff. We're done with the Outback. Well, sort of. We're done with the big projects on the Outback, and we can get to getting this WUTANG car on the road. And we've got some cool cars. I've got 3 STIs. One is sort of not an STI, sort of an STI on the way to here that I'm going to be also working on fixing, making videos on, all that sort of good stuff. This short block is out of a 2011 STI that we just parted out. If you missed those videos, you can check those out after this one. The car was in a front end accident. It jumped time on this side. I wasn't too concerned about that because I've got 2 cylinder heads back from the machine shop. I've had them sitting around for about a month. This short block was supposed to be all good, and we ran into a slight issue. As you can see, there's some marks here, and I found water and actually rust in the cylinder. When I got the car, the injectors were all out of it, and I think water went down into that cylinder through that. And I cleaned it up. It cleaned up okay. And I'm just going to run it because I want to try it. I want to see if it works out. I'm going to be driving this car for a little bit anyway, so I'm not concerned. If it does have problems, I'm going to experience it, and I'm not just going to fix this car and put it for sale immediately. So we're assembling this motor today, hopefully getting it timed up, hopefully getting the WUTANG car in here and the motor pulled. It depends on how much I can get done. First order of business is I already cleaned up the deck here. I'm going to go wipe that down once more. I'm also going to pull the oil pump because I will show you when I get it off. The screws on the back side of here, they like to come loose, and that is not a good thing. So I always want to check and reseal that to make sure that that's good to go. Then we're getting these cylinder heads on. These are just OEM rebuilt cylinder heads. This car is not going to be seeing anything crazy. We might turn it up a little bit with the stock turbo. So, we're cranking all of maybe 300, 330 horsepower, somewhere around there. It's not on E85. So let's get rolling, get this thing going. I hope you guys are excited as I am because I've been waiting to get this one on the road. I miss driving an STI hatchback. So if you're putting on a used oil pump or you're replacing something or you're doing your timing and you don't have knowledge of this being done, I would recommend it. I didn't used to do it, but multiple ones that I've taken apart now have all had loose screws. I know it's a lot of extra work, but a failed oil pump is also a lot of work. So while you got it apart, I recommend doing it. I know it's some extra work, but I gotta recommend to do it for sure. So this one might be completely fine, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So the screws I'm talking about, these guys right here, this one looks really clean. So screwdriver, tight, 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 tight. So all of them feel tight on this one, which is a good thing. We just wasted taking this off, but guess what? I'd rather do that than possibly have issues on the road. So I like to play a little bit more of the safe route. Let me throw this back on. Time lapses, jump clips. I'll see you after those. What are you doing, buddy? What are you doing? Another thing I always do when I put a motor together is at least some sort of pickup, aftermarket, Killer Bee, IAG. One of those two are the good ones. This one just has an OEM baffle, and we're going to put an OEM pan on it. I made sure to clean everything really well before I put it on. We're going to seal up this oil pan. We already sealed up the oil pump, and then we'll be on to cleaning the deck, getting the heads ready, checking valve lash, getting those on, and hopefully timed up tonight. Cylinder heads, fresh from the machine shop. Always super nice. It's just so much nicer putting together stuff that is fresh and clean. What I'm going to do is take all these cams out. I'm going to clean everything, and then I'm going to torque everything down, and I'm going to check valve lash. I'll show you how I check valve lash on these. It's really easy, and hope that they are within spec. They usually set valve lash for me on these. If not, that's going to be a bummer because it takes a while to change that all up on these. So let's hope it's in spec. These cylinder heads were out of, I think, my lifted STI actually when I bought it. Now, another issue we're going to have to address, this cam sort of spins freely. This one does not, and there is oil in there. So that is something we have to address. It might just take a little bit of taking an edge off something. That's pretty common. Again, a lot of times they will spin freely, but sometimes you have to deal with when they don't. So it's all things that I'm going to address as I go. So I'm going to torque these down and check lash. I believe spec, I'll have to double check, but I believe it is 0.008. I'm going in inches, 0.008 for the intake side, plus or minus 0.0016. So I basically shoot for 0.007 to 0.009, and for the exhaust side, I believe the spec is 0.014, so I shoot for 0.013 to 0.015. I think the tolerance is the same. 0.0016, I believe, is the tolerance, plus or minus. It's just going to be time lapsing unless I find something interesting, because it is a lot of little meticulous stuff that takes a lot of time. So it's boring. I have fought these cylinder heads like no other. I've never had this much trouble trying to get the cams to spin freely. This cylinder head, I believe I am now done with. I just had to mess with trying to get the cams to spin nice and free. This one I'm not done with. We had some valve lash that was a little bit off. I did fix this one, and I'm going to set up the camera and show you how I do change the valve lash. It's pretty simple if you have spare buckets. I would recommend just having your machine shop set valve lash for you. Usually they are right on. This one was a little bit off, so I'll show you the simple process of how I do this. So this is all in inches. I don't know. I'm not the best with measurements in terms of, I think this is 15 thou, 7 thou. That's how I believe how it works. So we were all good. 13, 13, 13 thou. The spec is 13 to 15. I could leave this one, but I'd like to get it closer to these. It was kind of on the edge of being 16 thou. So this is the bucket out of the one that is 15 thou. I'm going to take my micrometer. I'm going to measure it, and it measures 0.193. Now we need a thicker bucket. We only need to move 1 or 2 thou. So I'm going to shoot for, yeah, let's shoot for 0.195. I lost the remaining parts of that video, but essentially I had too much valve lash, and so I just needed to find one of those cam buckets that was a little bit thicker, only 1 or 2 thousandths thicker. Once I did that, we got the driver's side cylinder head bolted on, check valve lash again. I had to make a few more adjustments. Then we were on to the passenger side. Same thing, needed to make a few adjustments to valve lash once the heads were bolted down. When I say these cylinder heads took me a long time, it took me hours to get them done. But I finally got the long block all sealed up. Now it's time for the tradition of having to pull and push the vehicle into the barn, because we've got a pretty good size hill going up there. And of course it doesn't run because they're all Subarus. All I have to do is put a tire in between the vehicles, and it usually does pretty good. Sometimes it leaves a little bit of a tire mark, but it usually comes off. I'm telling you, the yellow on this car is growing on me. What you doing, buddy? After way too long of a battle, long block is fully assembled, sort of. Valve lash is set, everything's torqued down, and now we can get on to timing this thing. But I got the WUTANG car here in the barn, finally. I haven't even had this thing in the barn, haven't had it up on the lift, so I don't even know all what's underneath it. The next step slash goal is take the motor out of this thing, because I'm going to need the intake manifold, the fuel system, the intake, all sorts of different stuff. And I'm going to put all that stuff onto this long block, and then we're going to put this long block back in the car. And hopefully we have a successful job. I'll explain as I go, but I'm not putting all the modifications back on this. It's got a Blausch turbo, this intercooler, these coilovers, things like that I'm taking off. I've got some OEM suspension with lowering springs. I've got a factory intercooler, because we're not going to need this intercooler. I don't want the Blausch turbo. I'm just going with a OEM STI turbo. And I'm sure there's going to be some other stuff as well that we're taking off. We're going to sell or keep for another project. Then this car will be a little bit simpler to get a tune on and get that tuned, and hopefully for me to enjoy it for the summer. Next, it's just going to be time lapses, things like that, unless I find something interesting. So I will see you after the time lapses and jump clips. As I said, this is the first time that I had the car in the barn, so I kind of took my time taking it apart, looking at all the different things that were on it. I had a general idea of the modifications, but I never really dug into it. It was cool finding all the different parts along the way. Sometimes I like doing it like that. Engine is pulled. Check out, it was about to fall off. Cosworth engine tag. Pretty cool. Cosworth is like an old school, more of an old school brand, but really good. Cosworth fuel rails. It's a Blausch turbo. I'm not planning on using it for this car. I am keeping this external wastegate set up. What's up, buddy? And the plan is to just take everything basically from this engine, intake, turbo inlet, the manifold. I might get a different one because I think I have a cleaner one. Put it all onto this block, this long block, I should say. As soon as we're done with that, just drop it right back into the car and start putting it back together. And then I'll tear this down to see what's wrong with it, because he thinks that cylinder number 4 here broke a rod. I don't really know if that's actually the case, but we will take a look when we get to it. But I think I'm going to leave this fuel system. I think these are 1050cc injectors. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to have to figure that out, obviously, for the tuner. But I just need to keep plugging away at this. I'd love to have the motor dropped in tonight and start putting that back together. That would be awesome. I do need to order a tune for it. I could start it up on this tune because it's going to be pretty close to the same setup. So we'll see. Having the long block that you're going to drop in the car sitting next to the long block you just pulled out of the car makes things a lot easier. You can just take the parts, put them right onto the new one. You know exactly what's missing, what you need to do next. Makes it really easy. I know it's not always possible to have that set up, but if you can do it, I would highly, highly recommend it. Here in Michigan, it was really warm for the spring, nice and sunny. This is just some extra footage I had. Also, my dad caught me setting up my tripod on my car and had to get some pictures, of course. I thought it was pretty funny. And don't worry, the car I was standing on is just my beater. It's got hail damage. It's all good. I was very angry last night fighting this thing. All of the cam gear bolts, the Allen stripped out like they commonly do. The exhaust ones are not easy to get to, and I'm still fighting the intake ones even with this bolt extractor. I got one of them out, so I'm just not going to do that right now. I just want to get this long block ready to go. I can fight this later and after I get the WUTANG car running. I did see a lot of sparklies in the oil when I pulled this off. Definitely a lot of sparkles, so we've got some sort of failure. Cosworth timing belt guide there. I'm curious to see what the inside of this motor looks like, but we're going to just jump on getting this one done. I do have a brand new timing kit, brand new clutch, new rear main seal, all that sort of stuff for this motor, so we're going to pop that on there. I can get it in the car. No, 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 don't jump up there, buddy. Don't jump up there. No, no, don't. You're fine right there. You don't need to jump up there. Anytime I'm working on something, any the barn cat there just wants to continuously try and jump up on everything and get as close as possible. I'm draining the oil on this thing, and I am expecting some hefty sparkles. Oh yeah, she's pretty. Oh boy, she's real sparkly. Not to worry. That is what I expected. I did also find out these cylinder heads are definitely ported as well. I don't know if they're stock. Other than that, it would be kind of weird if they were, but here you can see it better there. Definitely a port job. Good sized Blausch turbo. Maybe I'll contact Blausch, see how much it is to recode it, redo it. This would be for a future build. Not really sure. Definitely going to save this like I showed earlier. Cosworth engine tag, short block number 447 looks like. The process of transferring all this stuff over can be a slow process. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. Perfect. 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 Also, coming soon in some future videos. Look what just came in the mail. We've got 2 titles in here. One of them's technically a WRX, but it's STI swapped. And the only secret I'll give you is that the STI swap WRX is rear wheel drive. And supposedly it runs and drives. That should be interesting. If you guys want to see that, make sure to subscribe so you can see when that video comes out. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed anyways. Hey! Dude! The next order of business. OEM STI turbo. I do have good written on this one, but I don't like the amount of shaft play that it has. It does also have wastegate crack, but that is pretty normal on all these, and I'm not too worried about it. So I take this brand new Mellet turbo cartridge, and I put these housings on the new cartridge so that I have basically a brand new turbo that I can use on this motor. I will try and find a link to these, but I also have a video linked to the whole process of doing this, so I will link that in the corner so you can watch that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I think these are about $300, so you can get, if you blow your turbo and your housings are still okay, you pop off your old housings, put them on this new cartridge, and then you can have basically a brand new turbo. And I like to do that in case of too much shaft play, sometimes in case of if there's just a lot of bearing material that went through it from the engine. So that is what I'm going to do. It'll be just jumping through because I already have that other video on how to do it. I just go through, clean both of these housings up, get all this old RTV off of here. Once again, the very first thing to do once dropping one of these motors in is push the clutch fork back, setting the throwout bearing into the clutch. If you don't do that and something is wrong and you put the whole thing together, you're gonna have to take it all back apart. So I'm gonna shove that forward, make sure the clutch feels normal, and then we're good to start putting it back together again. All right, that is set. I'm gonna see if the clutch feels good. How's it going? The amount of movement on that slave cylinder was a little bit concerning. The brake pedal also moved when I pushed the clutch in. So I think there's some sort of issue either with the clutch pedal assembly or these are known to have a firewall spot weld issue. I'm not too concerned about it right now. It doesn't seem to be causing any issues, but it is something I will have to figure out down the road. Lots of line routing, lots of putting things back together here, but we're about done. All right, oil is going in. I don't have any coolant in this thing because I want to make sure that it sounds good when I turn it over. We can build oil pressure and that we can start it, and nothing's too crazy to where we would need to take it back apart. So I like to leave the coolant out of it until that is done. I'm going to unplug the fuel pump fuse like I usually do, build up some oil pressure. This one does have an oil pressure gauge also, so we should be able to see pressure on there. Hopefully it sounds good when turning over. This is just like we do on all of our other startups. And if it sounds good when turning over, we build up some oil pressure. We'll plug the fuel pump fuse back in, see if it fires up. I'm going to leave the tune on it that's on it. The only thing I changed was the turbo and the intercooler. Everything else is pretty much the same, so that's not really big deciding factors of startups. We should be good to go. It's got the same fuel system in it. We've got a better battery. I think we're good now. It turned over a little bit and it sounded okay, but let's see what happens. No fuel pump, which is good. Sounds good. Nothing yet. I'm going to try and peel this tape off. He had a tape over the TPMS light, he told me. All right, let's keep trying. I don't know why it tried to start there, but I don't want that. Why is it trying to start now? I think we might have oil pressure now, though. Yeah, we've got oil pressure. I don't know why it's trying to start there. Maybe there's a little residual fuel sitting like in the injectors or something. I don't know, that was weird. But I'm pretty sure we built up all the oil pressure. Let's see. Oil pressure lights on. Oil pressure lights off. But I'm gonna check for leaks real quick after I put this fuel pump fuse back in. What is this thing doing? All right, I took my mic out because it makes it sound weird when I have my mic in. I've explained it before. I'm gonna see if this thing will start. I got the fuel pump back in. It was already trying to start, so let's hope it starts and let's hope it sounds good, and we will go from there. So she runs. Engine sounds pretty good. I didn't see any leaks. I kind of feel like I hear an exhaust leak, but let's get some coolant in this thing, or let me pop it up on the lift and take a look first, then put some coolant in it, make sure we don't have anything weird going on. Yeah, then I'd like to take it for a drive today, and that will be the extent of what we're doing to it. I'm going to be doing suspension, a fuel pump, a couple other different things, but that's not for today. I just want to get this thing running, take it for a drive, and see if we did a good job. Alrighty, we're gonna watch coolant temps, oil pressure, all that sort of stuff. Oh boy. A little bit of sketchy phone mount, but that's okay. So far, coolant temps are good. I just want to make sure the lower radiator hose gets warm, which means the thermostat is open and that the radiator fans kick on, showing us that we did successfully bleed the setup. This thing needs tint so bad. It's like a fishbowl in here. So far, temps are good. The clutch is goofy on this thing. I think there's some sort of issue with the pedal assembly. I can see the brake pedal move when I push the clutch in, which is not normal. I'm gonna see if the lower radiator hose is open or is warm so that the thermostat's open. Our coolant temps are good. I just want to make sure we're functioning properly, and then we might take it for a little bit longer of a drive and then park it. Let's see, it's idling. The oil pressure is in bar. It's like 1.1 bar, which would be like 16, 17 PSI, so that's not too bad. It's all the way warm, so. The lower radiator hose is warm, which means our thermostat is open. I'm gonna see if it'll warm up by itself, see if we can get the fans to kick on. All right, radiator fan just kicked on. So the temp should, it's only at 196, but the temp should still come down. Yep. All right, cool. Now I'm gonna shut the camera off and go for a little bit longer of a drive, and I'll see you when I get back. All right, our drive was successful, no overheating. I don't think any leaks. Of course, we'll have to check once we get back underneath this thing, but I'm super happy. This was one of the most exciting cars that I wanted to get back together, wanted to drive. I miss driving a hatchback, and it's just a really interesting car. Now, as of plans, I kind of plan on to drive it this summer. I don't know if the WUTANG part is staying on. I think the yellow will stay on for now. My buddy's tinning this thing this weekend because it is absolute fishbowl. But yeah, everything turned out pretty good on this thing. Interior is nice and clean. All the gauges work except for the water temp gauge that is not hooked up. The engine bay came out nice and neat on this thing, which I love. The intercooler is pretty ugly, so we might have to do something about that. Down the road here a little bit, I'm putting some OEM suspension with lowering springs on it. I'm gonna sell these KWs. I believe actually that one and maybe one of the rears is blown. I've got to get a fuel pump into this thing. I just want to put an AEM 340 in there. I don't know what's in there, so I'd like to check and put the pump in if needed. We've got to tune it. I think that's about it, but this is one of the first videos where I've kind of done like a whole start to finish, pull the motor, get it running. If you made it all the way through, I greatly appreciate it. Also, let me know if you prefer more consistent videos, like maybe 2 to 3 a week, or if you'd rather have maybe 1 a week from start to finish, a whole project kind of like this. Let me know in the comments. I like reading your comments. I like replying back to you guys. That's going to wrap up the video of getting the WUTANG car running. Like I said, we've got those other things to do. We've got an Outback to work on. And then the next video that I think you guys will see, I bought 2 more sort of STIs. One is an STI. The other one is a little bit interesting. You'll see that in the next video. I hope you're getting your projects done. I'll see you next time. What are you doing, buddy? You glad we got the WUTANG car done?